Divisions are rising over Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee, with Democrats now urging an FBI probe. That's after Deborah Ramirez claimed that Brett Kavanaugh exposed himself to her at a Yale University College party in the 1980s. It comes a week after Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing in the Senate was postponed over accusations of an attempted rape 36 years ago. Democrats are leading the calls to stop his nomination.
This was attempted rape.
I believe Professor Ford, Judge Kavanaugh has lied multiple times.
Doesn't Kavanaugh have the same presumption of innocence as anyone else in America?
His credibility is already very questionable in my mind and in the minds of a lot of my fellow Judiciary Committee members, the Democrats.
You think Kavanaugh's lying, though, is what you're saying?
I believe her. Let's put it that way. There's credibility to her story.
It's not just politicians that are denouncing Trump's pick. Comedian Jim Carrey used a caricature and explicit language to blast Kavanaugh. Meanwhile, one of his accusers, Christine Blasey Ford, is expected to testify in a Senate open hearing on Thursday. In an interview, Kavanaugh denies the allegations and says he also wants to testify before the committee.
A fair process, at a minimum, at a bare minimum, requires hearing from both sides before rushing to judgment.
Well, let's discuss this with legal analyst Jennifer Breedon and Andres Bernal, Professor of Urban Studies at Queen's College, New York. Thank you both for coming onto the programme to talk about this issue. Firstly, I'd like to start with you, Jennifer. How acceptable do you think it is for some media to portray Kavanaugh in a manner that is so damaging to his reputation before even any court decision is made on the matter?
Well, it's overturning the presumption of innocent until proven guilty, and that's what we've, really specialized in the United States judicial system. And so because we're now taking that presumption, putting it on its head, we're convincing people who probably had no idea anything about this case or even that there was a Supreme Court nominee to suddenly think that Brett Kavanaugh is a monster based on these allegations and these paintings of how he's been. Meanwhile, all we have are the words of two people. That's not to say that they are lying, but we have absolutely no evidence for that. And that is simply the complete opposite of what the United States Constitution and our judicial system was set up to create.
Andres, Jennifer's got a point, hasn't she? Nothing has been proven yet. It goes against that presumption of innocence. Why do you think there's been such a backlash here?
I think that really speaks to the importance of taking into consideration a culture that has been built and developed in the United States, and the way that it relates to power in this country. So I don't think anybody is assuming that anybody's guilty, but that doesn't mean that we don't have a responsibility to take victims of sexual assault and sexual harassment very seriously, and I think that's what we're doing right now, particularly as it applies to the misuse of power by people, and in particular men in power in our institutions in this country. So I think right now it's perfectly plausible and important to hear out these women. There are two so far, and it seems as though more accusations may come along, and enter into a process where we can hear those stories out and really put at the front and center what this means. Look at the evidence and see if we really want to appoint someone for a lifetime in a position that is critical in the interpretation and the production of law in this country. So I think it's very, very important, and that's what we're seeing right now, and that's what the backlash is about. Given this culture and this society that has for many, many decades completely ignored the stories and the experiences of women and just general victims of assaults.
Is it fair, though, Jennifer, as I said, so Andres has made his point, he says, that we should be looking at these cases, but is it fair that his reputation has been damaged so much?
Oh, it has been damaged, not only his reputation, but his family. Furthermore, what we're doing now is that the United States Congress and all those who oppose Kavanaugh on political grounds only are attempting to throw away our legal protections, that's due process, presumption of innocence until proven guilty, by destroying a judge that actually has upheld those rights for all Americans, regardless of race or politics. And so we're seeing a much more political mindset and a political strategy. And when we put politics over the law, when we put politics over evidence, evidentiary laws and protections, then we're truly undermining the fabric of what makes America so great. That whole presumption, the fact that we have put this out, we've blasted it, rather than providing privacy to both parties. I agree with Andres, actually, that we cannot allow somebody that is in power to have this kind of power with impunity, but at the same point, we actually have leadership, we have Democratic leadership who has not been called accountable for by the media. We have 4 Democrats at least, Tom Carper, we have several others, that people have come out saying that they were guilty of sexual harassment in the same way, but the media has ignored those in favor of projecting anybody who is conservative or Republican. So it shouldn't matter what your politics are. If we truly care about the infirmity and the sickness of sexual harassment, then we should not care about politics. But it seems that this has just come down to political slander because somebody opposes a justice who they consider to be conservative, rather than looking at his case record, his history, and furthermore, the evidence. I mean, I know that Andres mentioned the evidence, but again, we have seen none of that thus far.
Andres, why do you think this particular case is embroiled in politics? It does look like a case of political tribalism, doesn't it? Supporting one's tribe no matter what and attacking the enemy or the opposition even without concrete evidence. That's what Jennifer's implying there.
I mean, I think there's a couple points to make. Number one, there is actually evidence. There's evidence in the therapist's notes. There have been evidence in other people who were there around that situation. I believe in the case of Ms. Ramirez. So I think that this is just part of the beginning of having this conversation. But more to the point, we're seeing right now also, I agree actually that we can't just, when it comes to sexual harassment, sexual assault, focus on one party, and I don't think anybody's doing that. I think we're seeing, especially with the Me Too movement, we're seeing a rise in attention and the importance of looking at
the Me Too movement is absolutely
inappropriate behavior and misuse of power all around.
Sorry, Jennifer, we missed that.
No,
what did you say?
There's
but,
actually
I mean, we're seeing that with the Me Too movement. The Me Too movement is...
I don't think that's true. I think there's been a lot of people interested, for example, in revisiting allegations against Bill Clinton. There's been plenty of interest in seeing Al Franken was taken out based on this, right? So I don't think at all this is something that is simply focused on one political party. With that said, though, in this moment right now, given the implications for women's reproductive justice and Roe v. Wade in the Supreme Court, this is what we're dealing with now. We're dealing with looking at the character, the ideology, and the politics of a man that has been appointed that is putting, a lot of people believe, some very important things in danger of being overturned. And that, I think there's some very serious implications and connections
I understand the Roe v. Wade allegations, and I understand the disagreements and the fear that Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned. But again, these are more media allegations. These are more allegations from liberals stating that if Trump has his people in, if conservatives come in, then Roe v. Wade will be overturned. And all of this, that's simply not due process of the American legal system or of the Supreme Court. They can't just come in and overturn laws. There have to be cases. There have to be precedent. I mean, the woman who started Roe v. Wade herself, that was Roe herself, right, she actually came forward, the real woman, years later trying to overturn that law, and she could not do it. So to say that this is a big thing, I mean, you just proved right there by stating that Roe v. Wade, there are these big things that are coming in the Supreme Court, that this is politically motivated against Kavanaugh and has nothing to do with any evidence that's actually been brought forth besides allegations from 2 women.
Andres, if we look at what's been posted on social media, again, we've got high-profile characters. We've got high-profile characters. For example, comedian Jim Carrey's posted an obscene insult of Kavanaugh. How can you not say that these are not politically motivated? You know, in this case, it's a Democrat supporter showing his affiliation by using dirty tactics, surely.
I think it's important here to note that there isn't some abstract, objective analysis and interpretation of law existing in the legal system. That is a form of interpreting legal process that I think is incorrect. All processes that bring about the interpretation and the production of law in any society is inherently political. Trump's appointment of Kavanaugh is political. There is an agenda at play here, and there's an agenda because the justice who's retiring tilted the balance on the vote for Roe v. Wade and many other very, very important votes, which include the power of the president, the power of the executive to make decisions and to receive impunity in certain criminal situations and investigations. Also, Kavanaugh has a history of having a very, very pro-corporate and anti-regulation ideology and perspective. So all of this is coming to play. This is not just some objective, neutral situation here where everybody who is taking the allegations by Dr. Ford and Mr. Ramirez seriously are just the only ones being political. This is a field of discussion.
You see, you mentioned that
the
legal system in America and the judicial system in America is actually contingent on political ideologies. But in fact, actually, the Code of Judicial Conduct itself, which all judges and all legal process people are supposed to adhere to, the Code of Judicial Conduct makes it illegal to vote based on political guidelines. It makes it illegal for judges to be politically active. And so it's actually, there are laws set in place that say that it can't be such. Of course, you can look at somebody's case record and make an allegation based on that. But I mean, that's what this comes down to. Again, once again, we're talking about the thickness of sexual assault, but it's all coming back to politics. This guy's politics. He was hired because of politics. Now he's being fought because of politics. That is not what the United States legal system was supposed to do. I mean, my goodness, why do you think our founders actually passed these things, presumption of innocence? There is no presumption of innocence right now in the media. There's no presumption of innocence right now in the U.S. media or amongst American civilians or in any of these NGOs who get a microphone because he is Republican. There are 5 other Republicans that they're trying to undermine. Meanwhile, Keith Ellison, who has people lodging complaints of sexual allegation against him, are standing free. And so we are seeing this dichotomy. We're seeing this double-edged sword. We're seeing this two-sidedness, and that has to end right now if we actually care about these women. But the actual laws, and if you're talking about the legal system, I mean, I'm glad that you brought that up. The actual laws, and you can like it or hate it, but the laws of the United States, black or white, actually do state that any allegation of sexual assault or of rape or something like that, the person has to come forward and talk about their sexual history. They have to prove that it actually happened, and we're not seeing that. We're seeing now a Congress that says we don't want this anymore. Anybody who alleges anything should be believed right when they allege that. And I do agree that we need to look at the evidence, but right now nobody is saying that they need to do that. Yes, those voices should be heard more, but all we're seeing right now is people coming out and saying that this has happened because she said it. She shouldn't have to testify. There shouldn't be cameras. There shouldn't be transparency. But the rules of evidence, the federal rules of evidence, actually state in the United States of America that people who allege that they were raped, yes, this is hard. Yes, this is tough, but they have to provide evidence of that, and their sexual history can be called into question. And Congress is saying, well, but if you come against a Republican or if you come against the nominee for the Supreme Court of the United States, you don't have to do any of those other things that us normal Americans have to do.
Yeah, Andres, if we look at the broader picture and an individual... an individual is accused of something as serious as sexual assault, which is this case. Is there a tendency, do you think, for the media to jump on that bandwagon? And how can that be just? And how can it be justified?
I mean, I think even in the way that this conversation is being framed, we're already trying to blame the victim in this the way this works. I totally agree that you are innocent until proven guilty. I don't think that's what's at question here. What's at question here is, are we going to take these allegations seriously for a person that is about to occupy one of the most powerful positions in this country, in this society? I do not believe that, law alone completely neutralizes and makes all interpretation completely objective. That has never been the case. That is not how societies function. That is not how law, culture, politics, economics, and whatnot all come into play together. The fact of the matter is, some people have different interpretations of the law, of the Constitution, than others. That is the whole reason why there is disagreement in how to rule in some of these issues. Again, we are very infamous as a society to brush away and not take seriously and actually humiliate many women that have experienced sexual assault and sexual harassment. And I think what I'm suggesting and what many people are suggesting is that we take this seriously and put forward a real process that hears out these voices and puts forward the conversation as to, do we want to put this person into this position? Is that who we want to represent us? Is that who we want to have the capacity
agree with that. I
to
agree with
decide
what
on
you're
certain
saying.
things like Roe v. Wade, amongst others?
The point that you're making was that we need to listen to these voices, we need to listen to these women, and we need to ensure that their voices are heard. If they come out with something, to make sure that there isn't something more serious, to at least find out the evidence. Yes, I agree with that. The problem is the question is now going to, and I mean, you stated that yourself, the question is now going to, is this going to be, is this the person that we want in the highest office of our judicial system at the Supreme Court of the United States? And so now we're already talking that he's guilty. I think the fault is more on the media. It's more on some of the loudest voices against this by automatically assuming that he was guilty when they came out. Of course, those aren't your voices, but those are voices from U.S. media.
Okay, well, I think we're going to have to end that there.
Absolutely come
I don't
out.
think anybody's saying that he's guilty.
Okay, both of you, thank you.
We're emphasizing that this is a serious issue that is pervasive in our culture. Thank you.
Thank you both. Legal analyst Jennifer Breedon and Andres Bernal, Professor of Urban Studies at Queen's College, New York. Very heated issue there. Thanks for both for coming onto the programme. That's our roundup of the news for now. I'll be back at the top of the hour with more. But first on RT International, it's the Kaiser Report.